Yeah, I've got the random share giveaway. I got the random share prize. I got it all taken care of. You know what you need to do? I wrote it down, but you got to mark it on the calendar. There's so many events coming up. We've got the Hometown reunion this weekend. There's another reunion in Santa Cruz in October. That's the week before the Langston Motorsports bike show, which is going to be off the hook. There's going to be over 300 bikes there this year, and they've asked me to be the master of ceremonies. So yeah, it is. It's very exciting. So I'm looking forward to that, and there's some other stuff too. There's some other things going on. There's like 4 or 5 events. You got to put it on the calendar. Okay? Maybe one of those things will be like a romantic getaway too. It would be nice. Okay. Good evening, everyone. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Thank you for joining us tonight. Jordan, Chelsea, Susie, thanks for helping me put the show together. Jordan, let's get right down to the starting line, and I'll tell everyone what they're going to see tonight on the show. Starting line is, of course, brought to you by Motion Pro. Be sure to visit them online at motionpro.com. In the next time throughout this segment, we're going to be talking about the different colors you can purchase in zinc. All zinc is not created equal. I'm going to tell you more about that. In the Moto Showcase, Larry Navarro sent in a beautiful 1978 Yamaha YZ250. I'm looking forward to showing it to you in just a few minutes. Here's the problem. We've got some questions that have come in from you this week. One of them involves rim strips. We'll talk more about it. What's it worth? A 1982 Husky 430. We've got that coming up for you. Have you ever heard of an Italjet? I'll be telling you all about the Italjet a little bit later on in the show. Don't forget to keep sharing the show, whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, be sure to mention Motion Pro. Type in Motion Pro later on. We're going to be giving away a random share giveaway. It's going to be a little sticker sheet like this, compliments of Vintco. So don't forget, keep sharing the show. And if you're on YouTube, comment Motion Pro. How are the pros watching it? Well, I'm going to tell you about the pros watching it. But first of all, I want to remind you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Got a lot of people watching our shows now from all the shows that we have from VMX Q&A, also Vintage Motocross Radio. Sign up for our YouTube channel. You get a little alert like this. It tells you when we're live. Now, I'll tell you how the experts are watching the show. They're sitting back on their couch. They're watching it on their big screen TV while they're commenting from their phone. It's a great way to enjoy the show. You can see it on your big screen in HD and put your comments in through your phone. That's the way the pros are doing it. You should be doing it that way too. We've got some bikes in this week, as I've been asking people to send in their questions, their comments, and bikes for the Moto Showcase. And we did get 2 or 3 at least in this week, but keep sending them in. We get a lot of good things coming up on some future episodes. Inbox me at Vintage Motocross Q&A, or you'll find me on Facebook. I'm never really that far away. So whether it's comments, questions, bikes, ideas for segments of the show, be sure to get in touch with me. I want to hear from you. I enjoy hearing from you. As always, I want to thank all of our sponsors: Vinco, Motion Pro, Preston Petty Products, Racer X, Sunrise Vapor Blasting, Golan Products, Full Circle Racing, and Northwest Mako CZ. In tonight's Next Time Try This segment, which is brought to you by Vinco, I want to tell you a little trick that I'm going to recommend, and it's going to come in really handy. A lot of times when you're restoring a bike or just refinishing it, you're going to look closely at your clamps. This particularly happens on your Asian bike. Now, in this picture right here, if you look closely, the clamp all the way to the left is black. That's black zinc. The one next to it is got a green tint to it. Actually, it's not a tint. It's a drab green. Now, in your zinc plating, we're all familiar with what's on that exhaust flange all the way to the right. That's your clear zinc. In the foreground of that picture, that's gold zinc or yellow zinc, okay? When you take those clamps off or you look at other parts of your bike, it's not your imagination. Somebody didn't make a mistake at the factory. Those clamps may be two different colors. So what you're going to do is you're going to polish them, and the best thing to do is put them in a Ziploc bag like this and then mark what it was before you send it in for plating. Now, many of you out there may be dealing with your plater directly. When you get to the counter, you still want to have a bag like this to tell him exactly what finish you want on that bolt or on that clamp. If you're mailing your hardware into somebody, it's even more important, because when it gets there in the box, he's not going to have any idea, and you may not remember exactly what it was either. So I would recommend that when you take that bike apart, you get everything nice and clean, you take a picture of it. Then when you polish off the old zinc or whatever plating is on there, put it in a Ziploc bag like this and mark it. So when it gets to your plater, you know whether to tell him you want green zinc, black zinc, yellow zinc, whatever it might be. So next time, try that. I want to thank Vinco for being a sponsor of this segment. In the Moto Showcase tonight, which is sponsored by Preston Petty Products, we take a look at a 1978 YZ250 that was sent in to us by Larry Navarro. Jordan's going to go through the slides. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Larry had to say to me. Joe, I figured I'd restore this bike for show, but I wanted to ride it as well, so I didn't want to go too far and go with a showroom condition restoration. Besides, the bike had a few modifications already, as I've owned it for about 12 years. It's been kind of an ongoing evolution for me with this bike. I installed a Gemco pipe at one point. Also, I found an original silencer from eBay, which I mounted up to the bike, and I later replaced the 38 millimeter forks with 43 millimeter YZ forks. I also incorporated a double leading shoe front end, and I also added a hexagonal adjuster on there like that was found on the Works bikes. The rear suspension was upgraded too, with a vintage Al Baker FMF dual spring monoshock and a Luft reservoir. Unfortunately, the Luft reservoir came loose one day, got caught up in the wheel, and it was destroyed. I found out that I would be able to use a 1985 Honda CR500 reservoir. I made some mounting straps for it, and I found some rubber that I whittled away at and made a real nice mount for it. You can see how it sits right there on the swing arm. I stripped the bike down and refinished all the parts using a Scotch-Brite pad. I had it powder coated. Much of what you see has all been refinished. The original YZ rims were stripped of the old anodizing. I couldn't find the original set or couldn't find an NOS original set. So I used the original pair that were on the bike. And Larry, let me tell you something. That's a really nice touch, the way you polished them up. You can't find aftermarket rims for it, and you couldn't find NOS rims, but you did what was right. You saved the original rims, and they look absolutely fantastic. Larry also goes on to say that he rebuilt the carburetor. He refinished it using a special acidic formulation. It worked well on the casting, not as well as vapor blasting, but I really liked the way it turned out. I also refinished the cases, the head, painted it all with a good aluminum paint product, and I'm really, really happy with the way it turned out. I plan to ride it again soon. Thanks for having the bike on the show, Joe. I really enjoy all you do for vintage motocross. Well, you're welcome, Larry. And if you send me your mailing address, I'm going to get you a nice gift, compliments of Preston Petty Products. And if you have more bikes to send in, Larry, I welcome them at any time. This week, Preston Petty Products has a special going on. It's for a front and rear motor fender. They happen to be in orange, but they come in other colors as well. These happen to be orange. They come in red, yellow, silver, and they come with 3 number plates just like this. And you can bundle them together for just $122.50. And you can see all that on PrestonPettyProducts.com. Got some great little bundles over there. Sometimes Paul's put something together with the number plates. Other times he does it with the GP hex strips. And he's also had some specials going on with some Preston Petty jerseys. So whether it's red, orange, yellow, or blue, get over to Preston Petty. They've got what you're looking for. And here's the problem segment tonight. We've taken some questions in the past week from some of our viewers. Let's see what the first one is, Jordan. Dave Hopkins, I got into a debate with my brother over some rim strips. Tape, rubber, what's the difference and why would it matter? Well, I'll tell you, Dave, why it matters. Because if you use tape, you're going to wind up trapping moisture inside the rim, either through the ends of the nipples where they get into the rim, or maybe even down through the threads in the nipples, in the spokes. Water's going to get down in there. And if you seal it up with like an electrical tape or a duct tape, yes, you're going to be serving the purpose of maybe that spoke or that nipple not pinching the tube, but you're going to keep that water in there. And someday when you go to take that rim apart and you have to replace the spoke, it's going to look like it does on the right-hand side here, especially if you have steel nipples or steel spokes. So the best thing to do for $4 or $5 is to go online and get yourself some regular rim strips just like that. Next time you got your tire off, and make sure you replace it. So I don't know what side of that debate you were on, but whoever said you should be using the rubber rim strips has got the right idea. And by the way, this segment is, of course, brought to you by Motion Pro. I don't know if I mentioned that at the top of the segment. What do we got next, Jordan? Bill Sargent, I'm having the worst time fitting float bowl gaskets onto my carburetor. Any tips? I know exactly what you're talking about. Today, when you buy a lot of aftermarket gasket kits, especially when it comes to rubber, they don't always come in the same shape of what you're going to put them on. I don't care if it's a rotary valve in some cases, or in this case, it's a float ball. The first thing you want to do is make sure that if somebody used the sealant on that float ball, you want to get all that out of there before you go and try and put your new gasket in there. Another thing you want to do is use a little bit of grease just along the bottom of that groove that's in the bottom of that float ball. And then you should be able to press in that rubber gasket, and it should stay there long enough for you to put that bowl on your carburetor. Another tip would be this. If you're not going to use grease, if it's like a little bit too out of shape and grease isn't even holding it in there, you could use silicone. But just use little dabs of silicone along the way. You don't want to get it in there to where when you put the bowl onto the carburetor itself, it starts to squish out, causing silicone to go in to the float bowl of the carburetor. So just put a couple of little dabs along that groove on that bowl. And also, when you go to put it on, we're all tempted to put it on upside down, so the floats, of course, are not falling out. If you're able to do it, hold the bowl in your hand this way and put the carburetor itself onto it. Turn it over, put all your screws in. But I know what you're talking about, Bill Sargent. I've been there. Aftermarket gasket companies, they are not exact sometimes, but that's about the best way I have found to do it, and I've done it that way myself. So hope that works out for you.
I'm Ron Lachine, and you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Jeff with Motion Pro, introducing you to the Masterlink Press Tool. Now, the Masterlink Press Tool is an innovative addition to our wide variety of chain tools here at Motion Pro, and what makes this tool so unique is that it both presses on and presses off Masterlink side plates. It's designed to be used with all 50 series clip-style links and performs the job very easily. The Masterlink Press Tool is constructed with a billet aluminum body and hardened steel pins for long-lasting durability. It's affordably priced at $28.99 and is available from your favorite dealers nationwide.
In the What's It Worth segment, which is sponsored by Golan Industries. I'll be telling you a little bit more about Golan Industries in just a moment, but right now we're going to find out what it's worth. It's a 1982 Husqvarna CR430. Now, this is the segment of the show where I encourage you to type in what you think this bike recently sold for. I'll give you a little background on it. It was sold on June 11th, 2021. The seller was from NorCal. I'm not sure where the buyer is from, but I'll give you the description. And don't forget, type in what you think this bike was purchased for or sold for. It's a complete, numbers correct 430 CR with a brand new set of IRC tires, chain, fenders, and number plate, and air filter. The fuel tank is in great shape with only a few little dings and some wear marks in the knee areas. And the inside of the tank looks absolutely great. It's virtually free of any rust. It's got factory O-ring suspension. The original pipe and spark arrestor are on the bike. The original wheels are on the bike. The seat cover is in great shape with no rips or tears of any kind. The bike starts right up. and it runs perfectly, but could use a little attention in some areas. One area would be the coil wire sheath is cracked with some wire showing there. And I would think that the coil would need to be replaced in order to correct that. I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, it ran. It was in nice condition. It was very original. It sold in NorCal. What do you think it sold for? 25? 4? 4,500? The bike sold for $3,650. The seller was Wheelhouse Garage in Livermore. That's my friend Bill Wheeler. We actually shot a segment at the Wheelhouse Garage out in Livermore not too long ago. We're going to be having it on the show in the very, very near future for you. But check out Wheelhouse Garage on eBay. 1982, CR430, $3,650. How close were you? Pretty close? $3,650. If you want to know what your bike is worth, you should go over to the Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page on Facebook. It's been there for 6 years. I started this page back then. There were over 16,000 members, and all we do there is discuss the value of bikes. So whether you're purchasing a bike and you want to know if you're paying a fair price for it, or you're thinking about selling your bike and you want to know what you should ask for it, go list it over at the Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page. It's not the place to sell things. Nobody's buying anything there. We don't identify parts. All we do is discuss the value of bikes. And there are hundreds of albums with past sales results in them, from the Mecum motorcycle auction, from private sales, and just about everywhere. So get over there and join us today. Vintage Motocross Buyers and Sellers Price Guide page. You heard me talk about Golan products here at the beginning of this segment, and I've been talking about Golan products, well, for a couple of months now. Why? Because they sell the best filter in the business. It's billet aluminum. It comes in blue, orange, red, and it comes in silver like this. This filter can be cleaned indefinitely. It's got a little screen inside there, comes right out, and it will cut down any debris in your fuel down to 10 microns. You can't even see what 10 microns looks like, but believe me, if something gets trapped in there, this filter is going to stop it. It's the last filter you're ever going to have to buy. Okay, they're also looking for distributors. So go over, send them an email, or check them out on all of their social sites. They have one on Instagram, Facebook, and of course they have a website as well. But you can contact them at golanpro@yahoo.com. Find out how to be a distributor for Golan products. Even Golan, thank you for all you do for us here on the show. And these filters, they make them for everything. Road bikes, adventure bikes, minis, you name it, they've got a filter for your bike. Golan products. Have you ever heard of? This segment is, of course, sponsored by Sunrise Vapor Blasting. And I want to know if you have ever heard of an Italjet or Idlejet. It could be. I'm going to read to you a little bit more about the Italjet company. Italjet was an Indian motorcycle scooter manufacturer founded in 1959 by the Tatarini family. Their first model was released in 1961, and it used an MZ-125 engine. The first motorcycle was followed by many other bikes that Idlejet made, including a 50cc bike, which was released in 1962. Then they created a moped. In 65, the Italian company rolled out the Mustang 50 SS and the Vampiro 50. At the end of the 60s, thanks to a friendship with Tatarini and Floyd Clymer, a former American pilot who brought the Indian trademark, the company was able to work on some new motorcycles. They created an Indian 500. The bike was based on a Griffin, and also a Velocet 500 engine was employed. And then they had a Royal Enfield engine, which was a 750cc mill. The huge Griffin 650 was officially introduced in 1969. It was based on the Triumph T120 engine, and that was the first time ever Triumph had ever given their engine to another manufacturer to put in their bike. In 72, Idlejet started importing and distributing Yamaha motorcycles. One interesting thing was that the school business helped that company produce a new bike called the Buccaneer 125 two-stroke. Idlejet even got involved in the trials business in 1979, had teamed up and had an agreement with a company called Bultaco. Thanks to this agreement, Idlejet was able to develop their own trials brand called the 350T. In 82, the company introduced a new motorcycle called the Roadmaster 350. In 85, Idlejet continued to build motorcycles and went on to build a 350 and a 250 two-stroke till this day. Italjet is still out there building some great little bikes. And I saw one sell at the Mecum motorcycle auction for well over $9,000 last year. So Italjet, check them out, Google it, and that's how you'll find out more information than I've given you here on the show. Next time somebody asks if you heard of an Italjet, you say, yeah. My paisan, Joe Abadi, told me about it. Vintage Motocross, Q&A. Sunrise Vapor Blasting. We've been talking about Sunrise Vapor Blasting and Mark Fariester for a couple of months now. They're back as a sponsor, whether it's aluminum for a boat, car, motorcycle. It could be some antique that you have that needs some gentle cleaning. Nothing does it like vapor blasting, and nobody does it better than Mark Fariester in Modesto at Sunrise Vapor Blasting. Send him your part. He'll get it nice and clean like this. It doesn't change the profile of the metal. And if there's some brass in there or any other parts that are attached to that carburetor or whatever you may be cleaning, it'll all come out nice and clean, better than new. And as I said before, it doesn't change the profile of the metal. That's Sunrise Vapor Blasting. You can catch them on Facebook. Thanks, Mark Fariester. The expansion chamber tonight. We've got a great video that was sent in by Robert Oscar Pomeroy. I'm looking forward to bringing it to you right now.
Hello everyone, my name is Oscar, and today I want to share with you a simple and effective way to install your front fork to eliminate binding. One of the things you want to do before you get started is to make sure that your axle is, especially the part that slides into the fork, is very smooth, polished, and I would give it just a little bit of grease, because you will see how this comes into play when we go to align the fork. Okay, now that we have the fork polished and has grease on it, I'm going to install the axle, and we're going to tighten with the pinch bolts loose, we're going to tighten the axle. That brings everything mechanically, the braking plate to the fork, the axle, everything's tight, all the tolerances are gone, and then we're actually going to reverse it. I'm going to crack that nut loose and leave that loose while we do our alignment and making sure we're not binding the fork. Now that we have the axle installed and the nut is tightened and then backed off, I want to show you that no fork has a perfect indicated run out, which means if I'm going to rotate the fork tube in the tremple clamps, I've got them spaced so it'll spin, and you watch the front axle and you'll notice that the bottom fork leg goes in and out depending on where the indicated run out is. And you can see that as I rotate forward and back. Okay, so now that we know that the fork doesn't have a perfect indicated run out, how are we going to find the sweet spot in this fork that's not going to bind? And what you do is when you're rotating the fork, you'll feel the tension on the fork. It'll be hard to turn, and then in one little spot in the rotation, it's going to be super easy. It means the fork's not binding left, inside to outside. The fork is in a natural spot, so I'm going to rotate that and find that sweet spot. Okay, that's it right there. Okay, now that I've rotated my fork and found the sweet spot where there's no binding, the fork comes into an easy rotation, and it's the spot where the fork isn't trying to push against the wheel hub and it's not going all the way to the outside. It's a sweet spot, and the rotation means everything's in line, and I can float that lower axle when I'm done. What I do is take a little center punch mark, I don't know if you can see that, a little blue paint ink dot, and I put that on there, and I line it up with the split in the triple clamp, and I know that's my sweet spot for the next few months anyways. I'll check that every few months just in case the fork does get tweaked in a different direction. Okay, now that we've rotated the fork and found that simple smooth spot where you get that zero friction, which means everything's centered. And don't forget, the axle's already pulled all the way through. We're not changing where we are in the axle. We're going to find the sweet spot on the lower fork leg, and that's why they even developed the pinch bolt to allow us to lock that down where it's needed. The axle is already pulled all the way through. The next step is we're going to spin the wheel quickly and then hit the brakes. We're going to spin the wheel, bang, hit it a couple times, like that. And now that fork leg is not only centered from rotation, but with the brake on and the hub expanded, everything is lined up perfectly, and we can go down and tighten those pinch bolts. So one of the things I can tell that once I've done that, I can tell my brake is basically it's on off. It has very little throw to get it to spin freely and come to a lock. That's good. There's no spongy feeling to this whatsoever, and that's one big benefit of not binding the fork. A, it helps your brakes, and two, it's going to give you an extremely fluid ride instead of that harsh knocking. It's hard to explain, but I've ridden many bikes that are bound, and it's not a pleasant ride. Okay, I do have one more thing. If you've lined it, done everything I told you, and you're still finding a little bit of spongy brake, one little more trick that you can do that I've tried in the past that helps is to use a zip tie that brake down, then take the bike off the stand, push the forks through 3 times, then tighten your pinch pulls, then cut the zip tie. That'll help you center on both sides, because some of these forks are double pinch pull, some are single pinch pull, and you're going to have a much more firm brake and a better ride.
Robert Oscar Pomeroy bringing us a lot of information on how to center your front rim and not get forks that are binding while you're riding. I want to thank Robert Oscar Pomeroy for sending in that video to us. Full Circle Racing. They still got a great special going on. Powder coating hubs for just $50 a piece, whether they're satin black or gloss black for just $50. Tom McAllister will powder coat those hubs for you. And if you could do you want to do the brake plate, he'll do that for $10 more. For $20 more, he'll make them any color you like. So send them up to Tom McAllister at Full Circle Racing. He'll clean them, disassemble them, blast them, and mask them for just $50. And don't forget, ask Tom about brakes, not brakes, but spokes, rims, and everything else that goes along with your wheel rebuilding. We're going to take a commercial break. Don't forget to keep sharing the show. When we get back, we're going to have our winner for a random share giveaway.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, only Vinco knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vinco, keep the ride going.
Random share giveaway winner is Speed Ratchet Cycle and Restoration. Speed Ratchet Cycle and Restoration. Thanks for sharing the show. Please get a hold of us at Vintage Motocross Q&A. Get us your real name and your address, and we're going to get you out a sticker sheet like this, compliments of Vinco. Speed Ratchet Cycle and Restoration. In the Just How I See It segment tonight, Daredevil motorcyclist Alex Harville died last Thursday while warming up for a world record motorcycle jump in Washington. Harville was just 28 years old. He was doing a practice run when he crashed during the first event, Moses Lake Air Show at Grant County International Airport. That's about 105 miles southwest of Spokane. We want to extend our condolences to the Harville family. Now, when this hit social media, it was, of course, not only tragic, but it brings out a lot of different emotions and a lot of people. One of them kind of, I don't know if it infuriated me, but there were a lot of people sitting there suddenly who became armchair physicists, talking about how the ramp wasn't high enough, how he didn't have enough speed, what the gearing was, and just endless things that I felt were rather insensitive to the loss of this young man. I didn't think there was really any time to have that at that point. But there were also some people who asked me personally, and also asked on social media, do I think this hurts dirt bike riding? I don't think it hurts it. But if a kid is wanting a trail bike or wanting a motocross bike, he should really make it clear to his parents or show him what responsible trail riding is, motocross racing, and things like that, because the parents could get the wrong idea right away. And this kid was I call him a kid. He was 28 years old, father of 2. He was a seasoned professional. You know, he was out there trying to break Robbie Madison's record of 350 feet. He knew what he was doing, but that's the risk that he took, and I guess he sort of knew that going in, and that's where it all begins and ends. someone else has said, why do we need this type of entertainment? When will it end? It's never going to end. It's never going to end. It didn't stop when Evel Knievel did it. It didn't stop when Joe Einhorn did it. Yeah, a lot of people are tragically injured, but it's never going to stop because I think it's just human nature for us to want to jump farther, go faster, and do more. So I don't think it's ever going to end. I don't think it really puts a black eye on the dirt bike industry as a whole, but I think it's something that is tragic. And when it happened, there was just a little insensitivity out there, I thought. It could have been a little bit more on the condolence end, being he had just left a wife and 2 kids. Anyway, that's just how I see it. Our condolences to the Haverhill family. This Week in Motocross History is brought to you by Racer X Magazine, on your newsstand now, also available online. Don't forget to see our ad in the back of Racer X. 1975. Roger DeCoster goes 2-9 at Carlsbad and still gets on the cover of Cycle News. How big a motocross star was Roger DeCoster? He did not win the US 500cc GP at Carlsbad. His teammate Garrett Walsink won it for the 2nd year in a row. But the Dutch dentist, who went 3-1, while his teammate DeCoster finished 2-9. But the man was on the cover of Cycle News the next week, and it's kind of an iconic shot from Andy Haight. So, yeah, Roger, biggest name in motocross. Even when he loses, he winds up on the cover of a newspaper. In 1981, Chuck Sun wins the US GP. Team Honda's Chuck Sun, the reigning AMA 500cc national champion, went 5-1 to become the 2nd American to win the 500cc US Grand Prix at Carlsbad. Sun outpointed Bad Brad Lackey, who went 6-3 that day, and British rider Graham Noyce, who finished 3-6. The winner of the first moto was Brock Glover, but he crashed early in the second moto, and his Carlsbad win would have to wait until 1983. Chuck Sun won that day. In 1997, Carmichael, the first of 11. In the first visit to Southwick MX 338, a great track up there in Massachusetts, Ricky Carmichael won his first of what would be a record 10 wins on the same rough circuit. He was number 70. He was on a pro circuit Kawasaki, and he was going after his first title. RC visited the Wick 11 times over the course of his career, winning aboard a KX 125, a KX 250, a Honda CR 250 and 450, and finally a Suzuki RMZ 450. Ricky Carmichael loved Southwick. In the announcements tonight, Jordan, what do we got up first? Vintage Motocross Radio. It's going great. Last week, our guest was Gene Woods. We've got a little sound bite here from Gene Woods, and if you want to hear it in its entirety, you can go over to Vintage Motocross Radio, and you'll hear all about Gene, his speedway days, and how many different and wonderful businesses that he created, including a go-kart track presently on Fremont Street. Let's get a listen to the clip. Jordan?
How hands-on were you mechanically with your race bikes early on?
Well, I mean, you basically do it all yourself too. You have a mechanic usually that travels with it, because you need somebody to push you off. You have to push start these things, and quite a bit of traveling. So yeah, it was all hands on. I mean, we did all the bike prep, and if you were racing 5 nights a week, you were stopping on your way home at the quarter car wash and wash your bike off, and take your clutch out, do your clutch, take your carburetor apart, do your carburetor, service the filter, service the chains, mount the tires, clean your leathers, do all that stuff. So that was part of the deal. I mean, you had to be able to work on your stuff. There are very few guys that just showed up and raced.
Hot Shoe Hall of Fame. I was there at the end of April, beginning of May. It was an amazing event. So many people did show up for that. A lot of legends in all forms of motorcycle racing. Who came up with the idea of the Hot Shoe Hall of Fame?
Well, I don't know. I had a brain cramp one day. During all this time, I really liked the Trailblazers, right? I really enjoyed going down there.
Sure.
And I just felt that there was a need for another event. And I just kind of thought, Vegas is the perfect place for that. It's built for people getting together. There's stuff to do. I love the Trailblazers, but there's not much to do in Carson afterwards. There's no hotel rooms around. It's kind of a pain. And I thought, Vegas would just be the perfect spot for that. And we kind of wanted to do it a little different. I didn't want to have a big dinner, sit-down thing. I just wanted to have a get-together with everybody. And it started snowballing. It started out as a little deal. I said, I want to start this Hot Shoe Hall of Fame thing. So I called 2 of my good friends, Mike Faria and Jim Fishback, and I said, hey, you guys still have a hot shoe? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, send it to me. So those are the very first two that I started the thing with. And then I put a couple things online, and then the next thing you know, David Aldenas contacted me and people like that, and we're getting these hot shoes. I'm like, wow, this could be a really serious deal that people are starting to like this. And it just over a 7-month period, it just evolved into that event. And now it's taken over my life.
How many people did you have there, Gene? I mean, I couldn't even count them.
We had about 900 people there.
Gene Woods. Now, this Sunday, we've got a special show coming up for you on Vintage Motocross Radio, and you read it correctly. This Sunday, I am the guest. Joe Abate will be the guest. How this came about was I put something about a fantasy guest on the Vintage Motocross Radio page a couple of weeks ago. Someone said they would like to hear an interview with me. Someone else said Warren Reed would be great to have as the host, and you be the guest. Well, that's exactly what's going to happen this Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Warren Reed will be the host of Vintage Motocross Radio, and I will be the guest on the hot seat. I'm really looking forward to it. And Warren Reed, he'll be there. And I'll be reporting from, I'll be doing the interview from Hopetown, because I'm going down there for the Hopetown reunion, but I'll be doing it from there, then covering the Hopetown reunion after that. But I will be the special guest this weekend on Vintage Motocross Radio. And as I just said, the Hopetown reunion is this weekend. I will be going down there, bringing you some coverage for a later episode of Vintage Motocross Q&A. But that's this Sunday, June 27th. And if you get there at 8 o'clock, if you want to show a bike, you can register between 8 and 10, and then it's open to the public from 10 o'clock on. I've been to this event other years. Some really, really interesting people do show up. I've seen Roger DeCosta there throughout the years. Torsten Hallman. I know Brad Lackey will be there this year, and a lot of other people. And most of all, there's some amazing motorcycles on display. So it's the Hopetown reunion this Sunday, June 27th. Great event coming up in October. Plan for it now. It's 3 days at the Field of Dreams, and it's combined with ARMA, American Classic Racing, and of course the Field of Dreams crew. This happens on October 15th, 16th, and 17th. On Friday, there's a practice. On Saturday, there's races. On Sunday in the morning, there's a GP-style motocross followed by an open practice all afternoon. Now, throughout Saturday, there's going to be different classes for all types of different riders, from the minis to the modern, vintage bikes, post-vintage bikes. It's a great time, and 3 great clubs are all working together to bring it to you at the Field of Dreams in southern New Jersey, October 15th, 16th, and 17th. Let's get down to the finish line, which is, of course, sponsored by Northwest Mako CZ, and I'll tell you what's happening there. We got a special from Northwest Mako CZ happening this week. We've got a billet rear brake plate and some brake pedals for that CZ. Look at those. Really beautiful, beautiful finish on the stuff made there at Northwest Mako CZ. $129 for the rear brake plate, $109 for the brake pedal. Alan Brown, thanks for all you do for us here at Vintage Motocross Q&A, and also for how many people you help out there in the CZ and Mako world. Check out those specials. T-shirts and hoodies are still available for just $19.99. T-shirts come in gray and white. The hoodies cost you a couple of bucks more. If you follow the link in the show description, it'll take you right over. You can order a shirt. It'll be delivered right to your home, just $19.99. A couple of bucks more for the hoodie. Vintage Motocross Q&A sponsorship opportunities are still available. We've just had 2 people renew, Golan Products and Sunrise Vapor Blasting. We're reaching over 20,000 people a week. This is a great opportunity for you. If you've got a little business on Facebook, get a hold of me. I'll put a budget together for you. We can get you out there. You'll be on Facebook. You'll be on our YouTube channel as well. And I also mention you on Sunday when I do the interview show, Vintage Motocross Radio. So get a hold of me. We'll put something together for you to become a sponsor on Vintage Motocross Q&A. That wraps it up for tonight's show. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget to keep sharing it. Tell your friends about Vintage Motocross Radio, and don't forget to remind everyone that I will be the guest on Vintage Motocross Radio on Sunday. Warren Reed will be your special host. Thanks for joining me. Share the show. Thank you to the sponsors and for everyone that watches. Gino! Maybe he's a little shy. Come on, Gino. Oh,